Is it really possible to prove God? What even is God? Can I prove God? Yes, I think I can do it. In fact, I think I'm the only one. Hello thinkers, welcome back to the Apex Mind. The idea for today's video is to prove God. So let's get right into it. Now, in order to prove God, we need to firstly agree on a definition of God, because so many different cultures have so many different definitions of God, or at least their gods are very different. Christians have Jesus, Muslims have Allah, Hindus have a plethora of entities who can each become Ishwar, but for the sake of this discussion, let's just take Parabrahman, the ultimate entity. And then there is other concepts. I think in Greek they have the concept of Zeus, and then there is a higher reality than Zeus, Yggdrasil, the tree of life or something. But the main point that is going to remain is that God ought to be a concept, right? In the sense that, for example, when you're trying to define bird, you're not necessarily trying to define an ostrich or a penguin. What you are trying to define is the category of bird. Similarly, what qualifies under the category of a god, creator of the universe, or at least the initial cause of the universe, is something that I think all of these people agree on when it comes down to God. Second, beinghood, because Jesus is a being. Parabrahman is actually not a being. So, beinghood is not something that all cultures agree upon when it comes down to God. So we cannot take beinghood into account. That cannot be taken into account. What else can we take into account? Okay. Yes, the defining aspect of everything. See, within Abrahamic cultures, if Allah says something, it is correct. If Allah deems something good, it is good. If Allah calls a bird, it is a bird. If Allah calls a donkey, what we understand to be a donkey, a bird, then it becomes a bird. And same goes for God, same goes for Jesus, same goes for Krishna. God is where we get truth, right? And there is a famous quote by Jesus also, which is, I am truth, I am the light, I am where everything comes from, whatever. So the point of the matter is, metaphysically speaking, the concept of God is that God is equals to truth, or more accurately, God is the principle on which truth is based. So God is the origin point of all truth, right? So another way to look at truth, for example, when you say that something is right or wrong, it is only right because it is truthfully right. Anything that you want to give a definitive statement about, that you are not calling to be subjective, is objective in nature. It does not rely on a particular subject, and hence God is the ultimate objectivity, and ultimate objectivity also aligns with God being truth. So, therefore, God always, regardless of what he has to be, is always supposed to be truth. At least, and also, God is supposed to be the origin point of everything as well. Those are the two things that happen. If I wanted to simply be metaphysical, I would stop at the truth definition. But this time around, I'm also going to tackle the creator aspect of it, or at least the source of all thing aspect of God. Now, how do I go about doing that, right? That is this video. Now, what is the problem with calling this bottle a bottle? There must be a problem with it, right? Otherwise, I have an access to God's vision. The problem is that I'm assuming a bunch of things to be true whenever I call this bottle a bottle. What are these things that I'm assuming to be true? Firstly, what I'm assuming to be true is that the uh, concept of a bottle that I have in my head is actually what bottles mean. Secondly, I'm assuming that my eyes are giving me an accurate portrayal of reality. For all I know, my eyes are wired completely differently from what actually is in reality. Maybe when there is a straight line, my eyes are such that I always see a curved line. How am I supposed to verify my eyes? I cannot verify them by tools, because ultimately, even the results of those tools are going to be seen by my eyes. Therefore, there is no way to verify your senses, and hence, when you take sensory information and you take it to be true, you are already taking an assumption, which is what? Which is that the sensory information that you have is correct. Your senses are accurately calibrated to reality, but that is not necessarily the case. Now, that is an assumption. What is the problem with an assumption? The problem with an assumption is that it leaves room for error. If I assume x is equals to 2, what are the two outcomes out of this? The two outcomes are either it is true or it is false. It's a binary choice, right? It is not always true. And if it is not always true, then how can it be towards the truth axiom? As in, how can it be truth? And if it cannot be truth, then it cannot come to God, or at least, like, we cannot know it for certain, right? So, as such, how do we solve this dilemma of assumptions? But that is a question. That is a very interesting question. But there is a better way to look at it. A better way to look at it is that assumptions need to be removed. Whatever is truth will have no assumptions, because it will be self evidently true. It can only have an assumption if whatever assumption there is. What does assumption do? Assumption makes it so something can be true or false. But if something is innately true, then it might not require an assumption, right? So the ultimate understanding, therefore, would be that if we are able to reach something, or some concept, or some anything which has no assumptions, we'll reach God. We'll reach truth, and by truth we can reach God. And if that truth can explain the origin of everything, then that is definitely God, right? So let's see. How do we do that exactly? I'll tell you how you do that. You reverse engineer understanding, or at least you go back uh, to everything. See, I understand a lot of things. I understand this is a perfume can. I understand that this is a mic. I understand that a video is going on. And these are based on what? My understanding of the world is not immediately apparent to me, right? I learned as I grew up in the world that these things can be termed as perfume, and other people also agree upon it. A lot of assumptions. So let's strip all of that. What do I see right now? I see this. I see this in my eyes right now. I am not going to call it a mic. I'm not even going to name it a color. I'm not going to say anything. I see this. It feels something. I see, I feel, right? So there is this thing, and I know it exists because I can feel it. I can see it in my head, right? I can at least, like, I can see it. So, what are the assumptions here? The assumptions here is that this feeling is accurate, this seeing is accurate. It might be, it might not be. So let's remove that entirely. Something is happening. I cannot name it seeing, feeling, or anything else. What is the next assumption then we what we can break? The next assumption is that I am seeing. If we removed seeing, I is the assumption. You, why do you think there is a you? Answer this. Why do you think there is a you? The reason you believe there is a you is because that is how you understand the world. If there was no separation between me and this thing, I will not know of this thing's existence. It will all appear like me. If everything is you, then what happens? Things stop meaning anything. But can you prove your existence? In the sense of, what are you anyway? Are you this hair? No, you call it a hair, so it is different. Are you your eyes? I mean, we can take them out, so I'm not my eyes. I am definitely not the breath I'm having. I'm definitely not my brain either. We can remove your brain. We can at least remove parts of it. At what point do you stop being you? And when someone dies, yeah, they stop being themselves. So what escapes? People often use the concept of a soul, right? This is the metaphysical understanding of that soul concept. Soul is simply whatever you refer to as yourself. And we can't place anything on it. There is no way of placing anything on it. What I then say is that this me is also an assumption. That is what it is. It's an assumption of distinction. So we remove this assumption of distinction. There is no you, or at least we are not going to take that assumption. So if we remove the assumption of sensory information and we remove the assumption of me, what is then left? Well, what is then left is something. See, I cannot call something me. I cannot say it is a mic. I cannot even say that I can see or whatever. But something is going on, right? And if something is going on, what does that mean? That means awareness, right? There is awareness of me, awareness of this mic. Maybe I don't exist, maybe the mic doesn't exist, but awareness does exist, right? Because awareness is the whiteboard here. The mic doesn't exist, the person doesn't exist, but they are being drawn on something, right? That is awareness, that is consciousness, that is what everything is drawn on. This is going to, what I'm going to say next is a difficult concept for a lot of people to understand, and I'll try my best to make it make sense to you. It's your consciousness doesn't exist in your head. You don't exist within a universe. The universe exists within your consciousness or within consciousness. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. Why does it not make sense? It doesn't make sense because you assume that there is a world. How do you prove the world? By your senses. But then again, see, the problem is when you remove all assumptions, right? You cannot trust what your eyes sees. You cannot trust what your brain processes. You cannot trust the memory. You cannot call any of that true because all of them are based on what? A very singular assumption. It is called the assumptions of material reality or the assumption of empiricism. You believe there is this because you are seeing it in the video and I am touching it. It's an assumption. Same goes for the world. Because understand this, it is not that there is a world and you exist within this world and within you exists your brain and within your brain exists a consciousness. That is inaccurate. The moment you perceive a world, it already is existing within consciousness. Now, within this consciousness, there is a world. Within that world, there is an understanding of you. And within that understanding of you, there is a brain. And then this consciousness assumes that within this brain is the consciousness. That is the thing which is going on ultimately, right? So anything that you see here, whatever, is an assumption, and therefore the world itself is an assumption, and we have to then remove the idea of world being true because it is also an assumption. The only assumption that we cannot take, the only understanding that we can reach without taking an assumption is that we are aware of something. I'm going to remove the we also because that is not technically correct, right? There is awareness. That is all. That is one thing that is not taking any assumptions, that is lacking zero assumptions, that is self-evident, and that is unfalsifiable. And therefore, there is assumption is true. So at the very least, the two criteria we had for God, for God to be true and God to be the creator of everything, at least true is now proven. What is the next thing? The next thing is that creator aspect of it, or more accurately, the source of everything. Well, beyond consciousness, are you able to make anything to exist? Can anything exist outside of awareness? No. Everything exists within awareness. I actually want you to think about it and put it down in the comments if you can name a singular thing that can exist beyond consciousness. If it cannot exist beyond consciousness, then it does not exist. But you can feel free to try. So if nothing can exist beyond consciousness, and we don't quite understand the nature of this consciousness also, right? Because again, we understand the nature of the world and the individual and brain, but that is again be within the consciousness. So this field I do not understand the nature of, but it is where everything appears. That is for sure. That is for damn sure. So whether or not it created everything, it is definitely the origin point of everything for 110%, because that is where everything emerges, right? So God as origin of everything is also proven. So by this, what is God? If God is truth and sorry, if God is truth and the source of everything, then God is awareness. Thank you for watching. Remember to think, analyze, and one more thing, as I always say, patterns. They're everywhere.